Hey guys, welcome back, welcome back. I actually started to do this video and then I got a phone call that my car was ready. Um, so I had to deal with that, and then instead of hitting pause I hit the record button off, so I am just starting this all over again. Woo! It's so much fun. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about here, welcome to part 2 of Adam tries to fix the Sony Spider-Verse, or set up the Sony Spider-Verse. Now the idea behind it in the first video was that I was imagine a world where Spider-Man did not share the rights with Marvel and didn't go back to Marvel and all that type of stuff, or have that deal with Sony and Marvel. Imagine a world where they try to build their own universe, like the Marvel universe, just with Spider-Man characters and stuff like that, which is what they're sort of trying to do now, but really awfully, and without Spider-Man. So this version would have Andrew Garfield staying on as Spider-Man, at least for a little while. And, you may get into multiverse stuff later. But at this time, they want to build their universe. It's Sony. They're doing their thing. But, so the main thing is I was trying to do is the first video, not movie, I kind of went into sort of building the Sinister Six up. I also realized once I did that I was like, oh, I have Electro to show back up. And I'm like, and technically Electro was an original member, but I kind of had already built up Rhino as a member, and I realized I had not put Mysterio in there, who was an original member, which, I mean, whatever, you can go through whatever. But, so I thought what I would do in this video would kind of be like, because I realized in that previous video I didn't actually talk about Amazing Spider-Man 3, which, while these other ones would be sort of villain origin stories movies, which is kind of what Sony's doing, but not really doing well and connecting at all, they wanted to build up the Sinister Six. That was what they were really focused on. I think it might have been too soon to do it, but regardless, we're working with what we got here. So, the first thing that I said, first video was all about, we built up the cast of Sinister Six. At least in that video was Doc Ock as Mark Hamill. We have Kraven, played by Russell Crowe. Yes, I know he's not Russian, but yeah, accents are a thing. John Malkovich is Vulture. Rhino is still Paul Giamatti. Thomas Hayden Church would come back as Sandman, not the exact same Sandman from Spider-Man 3, but a more comic accurate version. And we had Electro. Jamie Foxx would pop back up, a future movie, or Sinister Six. But I realized that we probably could keep Jamie Foxx out for now, because his character's kind of disappeared into the void at the moment. So he can come back eventually, believe me. But, so instead we're going to set up our last member of the Sinister Six, Mysterio, in Spider-Man 3. Which would then lead into I would make it probably a double feature, sort of almost Infinity War Endgame, where we would kind of build up the Sinister Six for the first movie, have Andrew Garfield be kind of defeated by them and broken down by them a bit, and then realize he has to get some help from some other allies that he will meet, or maybe he already has met or interacted with. So a couple of things we had to establish. Now, obviously, in the background, we have the Osborns to deal with. Chris Cooper's character is still alive. His other version of him died. There's a whole head in a jar thing. We're not going to go silly with that. We're going to kind of veer away from that kind of weird, silly Ultimate Universe, I'm an actual goblin bullshit that they did, which was, I'm sorry, stupid as hell. Just my opinion. But we would kind of have them being kind of in the background, having their own kind of storyline going on. Maybe even have Harry trying to deal with it, slowing the goblin thing, but now he's got the spider blood in him, which has made him just insane. But I would say almost secretly Norman's kind of taking away that addiction by secretly taking the blood from him and injecting it himself. So there's a whole lot of injecting blood shit, so he can kind of perfect the goblin serum a little bit more. And his idea behind it being a brilliant scientist is, I can perfect this shit. It's like, oh, this idiot kid did this shit. He didn't know what he was doing. So this is me perfecting it. And, Norman Osborn tries to find another way to fix it and all that. Would be one kind of storyline in the background. Because we're building up to eventually having Green Goblin and Spider-Man face off, like Norman and Peter Parker, obviously. So that's what we'd be kind of building around with Spider-Man 3. We'd have the Osborns kind of in the background, plotting their own little storyline. Trying to keep away from Peter Parker because... Peter Parker obviously is very angry because Harry, his friend, killed Gwen Stacy. We would introduce Mary Jane in this movie as well. She would be played by Holland Rodan, who was on, most recently I think was on Teen Wolf show. Redhead, looks very much like a Mary Jane, right about right age range for what she would need to be. I wouldn't have them immediately get together. I would have there be a flirtation, build it up a little bit, because we don't want to just be like, well, that bitch is dead now. And not that he wouldn't date, because you're young like that. You have to, probably find somebody else eventually if someone's dead. But I would kind of have flirtations. I also casted Juno Temple as Liz Allen and Emily Browning as Betty Brandt. We would have them working for the Daily Bugle, so we can kind of set that up. J. Jonah Jameson would obviously still be played by J.K. Simmons, because why recast if you don't have to? And he's great, so why wouldn't you? So this movie will be kind of about building Spider-Man 3, building up towards our Sinister Six double movie. Now, any other castings here? Yes, other castings. I would bring back Chris Zaleka, I think his name is. I would have Flash Thompson kind of reappear and have them kind of have formed a friendship, and he was there for him during some of his coping with, he was very supportive of Uncle Ben when Uncle Ben died, and then, they had some tension, but I think, they're going to college together. There's going to be a respect there. Eventually, we can tie into an Age of Venom thing with Flash Thompson, but right now, he's going to be kind of a friend. We also have Liz Allen. Maybe they all go to college together, kind of establish that relationship. Harry can kind of be in the background, like maybe have some interaction with Peter, but there's definitely some tension there, obviously, for obvious reasons. But we're not at the point where he's gone venomized and stuff like that and wants to actually kill Harry. So we're not there. But there's definitely an edge to the Spider-Man now. He's a little more darkness to him. Not like full-on dark, but, we're building towards eventually getting to the symbiote. But in time. So Mysterio would be played by Daniel Radcliffe. An idea with this would be that Mary Jane is an actress and a model, and he's a special effects guy. So there'd be like maybe a film school. It's New York, so that absolutely makes sense. And maybe he kind of just, because what I've read about Mysterio and what I know about Mysterio is he's just petty. So like, it's not like some of the other villains who are like, you did this to me. So he's just like, I just don't like you. I'm petty, so I'm going to be a villain. And so, uses special effects and all that to do that. So I'd say play off into like maybe he's jealous of, Peter Parker's interaction with Mary Jane. He's also jealous of Spider-Man. So you build up that kind of thing. And, he'll be defeated, obviously, at the end. But maybe we have a little after credits scene where he gets recruited into the Sinister Six by Mark Hamill's Doc Ock, which would lead into our thing. I would also have, I would bring back Lizard as well. Not as in Lizard form, but as Kirk Connors. And maybe Peter Parker wants to help him, rehabilitate and all that stuff. And, there were definitely some tension because he did kill Gwen Stacy's dad and all that. There's some sympathy for him. He's more of a sympathetic villain. So if you want to go with a sympathetic villain, Lizard definitely fits that thing because Kirk Connors generally is a good guy. He just was trying to cure his arm thing, and it just kind of went out of haywire and went out of craziness, which happens sometimes. What else? Who else is in this movie? Of course, you'd have Aunt May doing some scenes because... Oh, yes, Black Cat. Felicity Jones, that's her name. She would be there kind of... I would have her show up a little bit, maybe interact with Harry a little bit, and then show up and kind of maybe fight Spider-Man. Play off a little bit like... she basically is his Catwoman, so play off that a little bit. Some flirtation there, some interaction, trying to stop him and all that. She's slightly a villain, but she's not really a villain. So kind of like Catwoman, she kind of leans on the edge a bit. She's got connections to Oscorp, but she's not like gonna go in the Sinister Six or anything like that. So she flirts very much with Spider-Man, but she doesn't like Peter Parker. So there's a whole dynamic there. You can play with that a little bit, but I would have him flirt with Betty Brown. I would have him flirt with, besides Mary Jane. We'll build up to him getting together with Mary Jane, but this is still a Peter Parker who's still very much coping with the loss of Gwen Stacy. So he's not immediately gonna be like, I need to be in a serious relationship right now. Some guys do that. That's fine. That's not what we want to go with Peter Parker's playing off his darkness. And even some of his confidence. So, at the end of the movie, like I said, Mysterio will be recruited. We'll have maybe like a final shot of the Sinister Six standing together, like we will come together. Norman Osborn is not going to be connected to the Sinister Six in this, but he will have some, connection in the background. We're building him up as a big main villain at a later time. Hold on, I got a text message here. Oh, my wife is on her way. Cool. Excuse me. So we would build him up for a future movie, Spider-Man 4. Now, as I said in the back, when I did the first video, Andrew Garfield would appear in those other movies, but they would be small parts because Andrew Garfield's a working actor and a great actor. I'm not going to make him do 800 Spider-Man villain spin-off things. We'd sign him for a couple of pictures. We'd Spider-Man 3, possibly another trilogy after that, the Sinister Six movies. But we wouldn't want to overbook him because he's a talented actor and needs to work other projects that aren't superhero things. But he's obviously a big fan of the character, so we would definitely want to keep Andrew Garfield happy. Now, I would definitely build into Liz Allen having a relationship with Harry Osborn eventually, since that is comically accurate. But yeah, so I think that would be how we would do it. By the time we get through the second Sinister Six, I would say have him be beaten down by the end of that movie and really distraught. And then he reaches out to Kurt Connors and kind of helps him sort of make the lizard formula a little more palatable so that he's not full-on villainy, but he can use those lizard powers to fight some of the Sinister Six. And Black Cat can also be an ally. So you get a couple allies in there. Maybe Flash Thompson helps a little bit, but I don't want to go Agent Venom before we get Venom. But I would definitely tie in with him and Harry Osborn, which like I said, secretly Norman's been taking the serum away from Harry, which will make Harry really weak. I don't know if we'll kill Harry or not, but there's definitely going to be a fight between him and Andrew Garfield at some point. And he'll be in a weakened state at the very least. And Liz Allen she's kind of gone villainy in the comics lately, so we can kind of tie in with that. Like she'll be resentful of Peter Parker then. And this will happen over several movies, obviously. And like I said, Sinister Six will be beaten down, then he'll recruit Black Cat, he'll recruit a couple other heroes. If you wanted to, you could introduce Silk, possibly, but I'm not sure. And no Miles yet, we'll get to that later, but Miles will eventually show up in this universe, as well as possibly other Spider people. But, start small. By the end of Sinister Six 2, they would be defeated. And then maybe by the time we get to Spider-Man 4, we're building up towards Norman Osborn and him having a showdown. But at the same time, I think there should be a Venom thing going on in the background. Now, I would still probably get Tom Hardy to play Venom. But because of that time, it's pretty close to when he would have played him anyway. So what I would do there is I would make sure that we got him locked in. But I would obviously have the symbiote thing happen. Man-Wolf will be a thing in this thing too, as kind of a background character. But I would have a couple things where he just beats like minor villains like Hippo or, one of these other, Big Wheel, things like that. Let's have him saving the day that way. So we kind of, still have him doing Spider-Man hero things and getting some of the press and all that type of stuff. So that's kind of an overall plan for this Spider-Verse. Now, I don't know if I'll do another video on this where we get more into the Venom stuff. But that would be how I would kind of set up the Sony Spider-Verse. So you have very much Spider-Man interconnected stories. The Sinister Six could be treated like Avengers films, and then you can kind of spin off into maybe you get into with Norman Osborn, you can build up to a big team up with Dark Avengers type of thing. Although Avengers aren't technically a thing in this, but you could have sort of your own little light Avengers thing with Spider-Man, Black Cat, Lizard, Reformed Lizard. Maybe even eventually Electro comes in as a reformed Electro, because he's been reformed in the comics before too. So, Sinister Six can still be out there, but we want to kind of get away from them, give them their 2-movie arc. Those villains might pop up again, they might not, but maybe lock them up in Ravencroft. There's tons of other Spider-Man characters you can bring in, obviously. There's hundreds of little villains you can bring in, obviously. There's lots of good villains. You have the Smythe, Alexander Smythe and all that. But yeah, so those are just roughly some ideas that I would go with to do this Sony Spider-Verse. So this is part 2 of the Sony Spider-Verse, plugging in Spider-Man 3 and 4, plugging in Sinister Six movies themselves. Rough idea, castings that I mentioned here already, I believe. Juno Temple as Liz Allen, Emily Browning as Betty Brant, J. Jonah Jameson, of course, is J.K. Simmons. And Daniel Radcliffe as Mysterio. Jamie Foxx would come back as a good guy to team up with Peter Parker. And we, of course, have, yes, Black Cat. So that's basically my rough idea, guys. Obviously, I'm not writing this or pitching this to Sony because that's not a thing that's going to happen. This is just for fun. And this is just kind of what I would have done if they really were obsessed with doing this Sinister Six and are really obsessed with this Spider-Verse thing that they're not going to do the animation thing. This is the best way to do it because you could have kept Andrew Garfield around, who was good in the role. It was just too many stuff things there. You get a good Sinister Six with the capable actors. You get a Norman Osborn really getting to flesh out and really build towards his villainy. Eventually you get Venom in there. So there's lots of other characters you can bring in too, obviously, over time. But that way you would get kind of your Spider-Verse, and then you can start bringing in things like Morbius and Madam Web and things like that if you want to go that route. But that would be far down the line. And maybe at that point they could even just, merge into Marvel at that point. But that would be what I would do, guys, just so they would have had a Spider-Man in the universe ready to rock, And maybe you could go into Spider-Gwen a little bit too at some point. The possibilities are endless, but that's what I would have done if they had not made the deal with Marvel. Like, just put Andrew Garfield in the movies, let him finish his story a bit. Then you build up. Then you can continue with Miles Morales if you want, or Silk, or any of the other characters that you want to do the Spider-Verse with. So there are definitely ways to go about it. So that's my ideas for the Spider-Verse, guys. I don't think I have any more further ideas at this point. Maybe you could do more movies and I could cast some more characters. I look into it a bit, but right now that's what I would go with. Yeah, of course you could get to a Maximum Carnage movie too eventually with Venom and bring in a Carnage. I always thought it'd be interesting to see Jim Carrey play that role. I don't know. That's been a fan cast thing I've seen before. I liked Woody Harrelson just fine, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see Jim Carrey go dark, kind of like he did with that one movie he did with he's a detective. Number 23. His hair was awesome in that movie. All right, guys. So that's our Spider-Verse, or my Spider-Verse, not Spider-Verse, but Spider-Universe, Sony Spider-Verse video part 2. Hope you enjoyed this, guys. It's not quite as long as the other one. I didn't ramble quite as much. I'll be working on sort of a revamp of the Batman, the 4 first movies that they had out, and try to connect them a little bit. I have some ideas, but when I did the video earlier, it just felt like it was too jumbled, and I didn't really know what I was doing with casting and all that. This one I felt like is a little more fleshed out, so I figured I'd do this today. Perhaps I can do that Batman video tomorrow. I won't make any promises because we have some other things going on tomorrow, but I'm really talking very fast, and I realize that. It's because I'm caffeinated, and I'm wrapping this up. Okay, guys, have a good night. Hope you enjoyed this, and let me know what you think below. Like and subscribe.